So actually, I'll be honest. I don't know that much about this topic. So, Mico, maybe you wanted to introduce this one a bit more.
Terry Crews recently. Oh yeah, and Christian, you also the articles you sent me, you were also like looking this up too. So if you want to say something about it, you can stop me anytime. Basically, oh, what did you want to say
Oh
something?
no, it's okay. I mean, I didn't find anything too unique, so this is fine.
All right, so then we can just like do a back and forth kind of thing then. So yeah, so Terry Crews basically those two tweets about like the Black Lives Matter, not Black Lives Better, and like the defeating white supremacy without white people creates black supremacy. Not that controversial if you think about it, but you know, like it's the internet. I have like Facebook responses, and then I have tweets responding. Oh yeah, there's a double slide, so you don't need to show the double slide later on. Okay, so the
Okay.
first one is the Facebook one, where these are a lot of comments by some people who are against what Terry was trying to say. So as you can see, like one of them is like, I think he's pandering to the racist ass company and co-stars he works with, and it's sad. Terry is disappointing me with his appeasing of reactionaries. I'm sorry, but white people cannot understand why his mindset is problematic, and that's why we are dead on this hill. He has completely misunderstood Black Lives
Oh,
Matter.
you should explain what Weird Hill is, by the way.
Oh yeah, so we like, I mean, like, I was
Facebook nerds. You took it from the
I
Facebook.
honestly didn't think we are gonna tell them where these Facebooks are. Like, but yeah, it's from a group called "This Is a Weird Hill with Naya on." And somebody posted Terry Cruz's controversial take on Weird Hill, and then got a lot of backlash against Terry, not against him, because obviously, like, he's the one who said it. And then blah blah blah. He's just like Morgan Freeman, who apparently thinks the solution to stop racism is to stop talking about it. Okay, so here's a couple things about this that's like kind of irritating me, because I don't think Terry Crews is in any way similar to Morgan Freeman. Like, I've seen some of the videos Morgan Freeman like like talks about, and I will say like Morgan Freeman does actually think like a way to stop racism is to stop talking about it. He's actually verbatim said that.
Yeah, he has.
Right. Okay. So Jonas, I think you can take away the tweet now, just in
Okay.
case. Yeah, I think Morgan Freeman did say that. But also like keep in mind that there's another tweet that showcased Terry Cruz's like support for Black Lives Matter. Like, obviously, like Terry Crews is more. I don't know how to say
He's
this.
not against it. He's sort of like pre-budding a sort of reaction that could be problematic.
Like, more about fighting against racism than like staying silent about it.
I mean,
I'll say.
on to understand the people who are upset is this is a sentiment that feels a lot of the all lives matter people who would say like, it's the whole reason why they want to say all lives matter, because somehow saying Black Lives Matter means only matters. So Terry Crews conflating Black Lives Matter into essentially what all lives matter think it is, which in a way he's also not saying it is that way, because he's pointing out that he doesn't want it to turn that way.
Yeah. So he's not saying that it is that way. Like, I think people are just misunderstanding him. And I think like if you go to the tweets, oh yeah, Jonas. So like if you go to the tweets, I think you can see like some of the
Yeah, I'm doing it.
Yeah, so one of the tweets is like, I can't support you anymore with every tweet. It's like, you just stab my heart. I think you stand for minorities. And I think you'd stand for minorities and black and brown brothers and sisters, but you just keep saying these undermining opinions like our pain means nothing. But I think these people are kind of misunderstanding what he's trying to say. And another person was like, no one ever said any of the things you tweeted, and it's truly devastating that you hate Black Americans as much. I think that one's a little bit like a lot more misunderstanding of Terry's tweets. Like, I don't think
Yeah.
Terry.
I don't think he's saying it to hate black people. I think what he's just trying to say is, I don't agree with it necessarily, and I'll tell you why in a moment. But I think it's he's just saying that basically, like, if we want to defeat white supremacy, this is something we all have to take part in.
Right.
But I
Yeah.
think there's two things I have to say about that. One is like true allies, we're going to join onto something. They shouldn't, if they're truly an ally for something, really support a group of people, they're not going to expect getting a cookie or pat on the back for helping.
No,
But
I don't think you necessarily. Okay, so hold on. Let me just go over the last tweet and then we can talk about it. Okay. So I think the last tweet is more clear as to like why people why some people are reasonably angry at this, right? Like, so for those that don't know the context, ever since Cruz stated that ridiculous comment mentioning black supremacy, he has been on this campaign to appease white people. Black supremacy was never a topic, and it just distracts from the real issue that we are fighting for. I think that's the most reasonable response from all of this that I kind of like took from the comments. So yeah, I think that person more reasonable response for it. But it's also still like a misunderstanding of like what Terry Crews is trying to say. I think like Terry Crews because Terry Cruz's tweet probably was in response to some other groups like Christian. Like, what did you say? Because there were some groups that were advocating for a little less of white participation, right? I don't know. I don't know what.
I've heard that too,
I
actually.
mean, I think I probably regurgitated the point. I don't think I particularly
Okay, yeah. So maybe
take
that's
instances.
probably something we see online, right? Like, there's probably
Yeah,
like some.
I've seen some people saying that like white people are hijacking Black Lives Matter and trying to make it about
oh yeah, and with
other
the
things. Like they're
looting
trying to
and
make it
yeah,
about Marxism or like say trying to spread like anarcho-communism. It's true there were some people like at the beginning of the protests who continue today just destroy shit or like take advantage of the situation in a way rather than actually being there for Black lives. Certain people are like complaining and saying that there's a lot of performative actions being taken, like, oh, we need to like remove this character, blah blah blah, versus like, hey, just reform the police. Where did the whole defund the police movement go, or like things like that? So I think that's what I've heard some people saying. I mean, I'm not saying the full argument. This is just part of what I've been hearing. There's definitely more points to be made there, but that's like some of the main points I was hearing from that. And I guess that brings up another important point is they're focusing on sort of like groups who are saying stuff like this, which actually in some ways does sound reasonable, I think, but they're not. That's not even close to necessarily what he was reacting to. I think in the sense he's saying defeating white supremacy without white people, but I don't think anyone's saying to defeat white supremacy we shouldn't have white people at all. Rather than white people should take like a different role in Black Lives Matter, or slightly different role. At least some of them should be. I don't think people are really saying that, but I don't know. Mico, you said, I mean, maybe I'm not really fully understanding what he was reacting to.
I have a couple of theories about why he might say that because I'm also part of like the more center left that's seen a lot of like extreme things, and then I feel like it might not be like the best.
Because it's such a small minority, yes, some of these things.
Yeah, so I think like I have no question or no doubt that Terry Crews is all about Black Lives Matter, and like Terry Crews is pretty much left at this point.
Hmm.
I just think that he also like has a problem with how like people carry out messages, right? Some of the extreme takes that they may have. So I think this tweet might have been a reaction to something someone said that advocated for white people not being in the picture. Because I've definitely heard that before. Like
I've heard some people saying things like we need to tear down every single like white. We should tear down most of the white statues and replace
well, yeah,
statues.
not even just that. I think just like solidarity between like BIPOC or POC that like not appease to like the white bodies and like white people aren't even like helping our movement messages. I wouldn't say like that's verbatim, but that's kind of like the gist or like the tone
Especially on
that
Twitter, I've seen some of these takes or things like people should okay, well, to punch up, we sort of have to rebalance the scales in a way. So that means that basically we need to like rewrite. Basically, we should like I've heard some people saying like sociology and like fields like philosophy and humanities. We need to replace all the white authors. We cannot listen to any European or white authors anymore. We need to listen to all entirely
yeah,
POC authors, and
yeah.
we need to boycott like these. We should stop listening to like white authors because they're all automatically biased or they're all automatically flawed or something. That's a whole
Or like
nother topic.
bad or whatever like that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and so maybe that's what he's referring to, something like that. I'll be honest. Like I even saw like was it Huffington Post or BBC posted an article about like some like big like radical left like philosopher who was trying to advocate for like that kind of stuff. but like those people, they definitely do exist.
And I think this is an interesting thing because like the discussions about kind of like safe spaces too, should be brought up, like should be talked about, because like safe spaces are like sometimes areas where some groups of minorities or like the like minorities like think that safe spaces are only supposed to be for a certain group, right? Like they wouldn't, like, I know that's not what safe spaces are like supposed to be, um but like there is a small minority who think that this is what it's supposed to be, like where you bar white people from entering, or like they aren't supposed to be there, or it's so like pseudo segregation kind of
Well, it
stuff.
goes from the general assumption that like certain people from certain identities couldn't possibly be in that space for a good reason, basically. Like
Yeah,
anyone from that identity couldn't possibly either contribute anything meaningful to the conversation. Um, I mean, that's a that's a big can of worms. It comes up a lot when I've talked in like subtle Asian traits, subtle Asian dating.
we'll talk about that later on. I just wanted to like bring that up really quickly to show the parallels in like what's going on, and how like there might be like some groups that feel segregated, or like how that shouldn't be like a part of the movement and stuff like that. So yeah, I just wanted to bring that up. But like, go ahead. What were you saying?
Oh, no, no, nothing more.
It says if Naya Rivera was white, not an inch of this lake would be left uncovered. I fucking said what I said.
Yes.
And I think this also has a lot to do with what we're talking about in terms of like racial privilege and like white privilege.
I feel like it does have its merits in situations. Like obviously, with like healthcare, this is an issue that comes up for people of color, or even just with women. This is an issue with women too. Um, but particularly here, I mean, I can't say how versed I am in looking for people who have allegedly drowned themselves. You know what I mean? And for and this is also an issue just looking at things from a layman's perspective. I don't know, would if this lake was full of boats, would that really help? Um, but I think it does attempt to reach a sentiment. I'm not sure. I feel like I get what she's trying to say, but maybe this perhaps isn't the best example. But still, I think the tragedy of a mother drowning herself in front of her young son is obviously a terrible event. But I think we'll probably need to go through, you know, cases where black women or white women have gone missing and we had to look for them. But other
Yeah.
than that, this seems like just another Twitter take.
They don't. It's very hard for them to find people. I think this person who posted this doesn't really understand how hard it is actually to find people, especially in a link that size. It's not easy. Like it really is not easy. Like they've already scoured the whole surface of the lake at this point, but like that's enough if the body hasn't went underwater or wasn't eaten by something dragged down. I mean, searching a lake, they have to probably do also like sonar sound in the ground and stuff. Like it's not as easy as it looks. I think, and so when they say not an inch of this lake would be left uncovered, by this point in the search, I don't think our modern day equipment or resources are put in for them to ever be able to have scoured the entire lake by this. Like that just doesn't happen. I mean, like I've seen these previous cases, and like there was a Twitter thread actually related that where basically someone made a point similar to this, and some guy commented who was apparently was involved with this kind of searches before, was saying it's really not as easy as it looks. So it's not like I think actually I remember the tweet was something like, "Is it really that hard to find a body like that?" And it's like, yeah, it actually is. So I mean,
Yeah. Also, like I think she's rich, right? Like she's a.
he's a
So I think
celebrity. They're going to be spending the most time. It doesn't matter what race they are. I mean,
yeah, they do have an incentive to look, no matter what race they are. Is pretty much my point. Because she's rich.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. She's famous, rich. A lot of people want to know what happened to her. It's very. There's too big of an incentive. I think that's my issue sometimes, though, when people who do say something. I mean, I get the sentiment as in, like, yeah, it does often expose a general trend, but like, it is true sometimes people will make an argument off of speculation, as like, if they were blank, this would have happened, or if they thought this would have happened. I hear that kind of take thrown around a lot, and sometimes I don't think it's always wrong, because I often think that it has a very good sentiment behind it. A lot of times, it does point out a general trend. Is Yeah, generally it is true that like if they were white, they would care more. But again, it's a celebrity. I mean, I don't think that's gonna at this point. I don't think it's really as relevant. I mean, maybe if it was like a random person, like no one really knew, just average. Yeah, or said something that was more nuanced, like sort of like I mean, I understand. I think she was letting out her frustration regarding how, especially like how like minorities generally often are overlooked or like importance in like these kind of cases, like investigations. But I think it's just in this specific case, it's like sort of there's a lot of things I think she's not really hasn't really acknowledged that are relevant. Yeah, I do want to go back to the Terry Crews. Sorry, one little last thing. Tone
Yeah.
policing. Tone policing is sometimes I think a thing to consider here in the sense like it makes me wonder if he was actually just tone policing someone like who was like expressing somewhat their frustration
You think so?
towards like they like certain people in the white community being like against like Black Lives Matter somehow like being like sort of like all lives matter types, and so maybe they thought maybe he was like reacting to their reaction in a way. But um I will admit, though, sometimes the thing with tone policing is I think it's very important how a lot of times people will silence certain people because they don't like the frustration, even if their frustration is righteous. Or there are important things to consider for effective activism, as in sometimes you do have to, rhetoric is important. I mean, of course, you could just say, well, fuck them if they don't want to listen, if they're truly allies, care what I say. But that's not always true, especially if you say things which are rather like unnuanced or somehow like just absolutely just like disrespectful. I mean, again, you say, "Oh, no disrespect should be playing respectability politics." But that's another kind of can of worms, I think.
Because what Terry Crews says is 100% really like just fair.
Mhm.
Like
It is fair. Without context, it is fair. Yeah, it is. Of course. I mean, like you should. I mean, main argument I had against it too was like I think most people aren't doing that by far. Like they don't want to say white people stay out of Black Lives Matter. I don't think people are saying that. Or most white people, you don't have somehow a role in defeating white supremacy. If anything, I hear the opposite, as in white people need to take a better role in white supremacy. And I mean, that goes all the way back to the 70s. I mean, when the Third World Liberation Front was happening, they tried to start something where they were supposed to go around educating, say, like rednecks who hadn't seen a minority in their life about helping to reform their communities. And the movement fell flat. I forgot the name of it, but it's been around for a while. That kind of stuff. So but yeah, I do think there are definitely extremists who are relevant. Again, I don't know if that's what he's referring to, but if he is, yeah, sure.
I think like also I think the on both sides, I wouldn't say just like the left side, but like there's extremists on both sides, and then like whenever we criticize an aspect of or like what somebody said on one side, right? I feel like we get a lot of like negative reactions from it, like, oh, you're misunderstanding, like like this is not like what our movement is about, which is like a fair statement to make, but I don't think we should be really defensive about it. Two sides are like a huge spectrum, like it's not just like a monolith, right? And a lot of people have their own takes, like how extreme they are on each end. And I think there needs to be like a clarification on certain ideas and topics that need to be addressed, or like certain statements that are a little bit more extreme that need to be addressed. It just can't be washed away with like, oh, that's not what we're about. That's not what our movement is about. That's not what our that's not what leftists
You
or
know
right.
what? It's a fallacy. We call it the no true Scotsman fallacy. It's like the whole thing. Like Scotsman is like a good man. Who never who respect women, and they're hardworking, and they're like, well, look at this Scots person, and then someone comes up with a newspaper and will say, hey, well, the Scottish person just like raped a woman, and then they're like, well, no true Scotsman would do that. And so it's like that whole idea of like we are who we are, right? And then someone comes and say, well, I found this person who is otherwise a counterexample, and you're like, well, that person's not truly a member of us, right? That person's not a true leftist. The true leftist wouldn't do that. But yeah, I do think I completely agree with you. You can't.
That's
You're
like
right.
that's like guys who are like, oh, I mean, that's not what a real man would do.
Yeah, yeah. So
It's like,
you gotta like be able to criticize like those people in the movement, as much as you don't want to. like you don't have to maybe like criticize those people. You just criticize like maybe like their actions or like what they've done that you don't agree with. Maybe like that could be something.
Certain things which are detrimental to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think self-criticism is something big, which is hilarious because the ones I hear who spout about self-criticism the most are actually leftists. Oh, where is that self-criticism when these people come about? I mean, I'm sorry, like,
A lot of self-criticism like from our side. I think a lot of people are too scared of well, cancel culture to be
oh
self-criticizing.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think that's a huge problem in leftist culture.
So speaking of cancel culture, Goya Foods. Let's talk about that. I think I did want. Let's talk about the cancel culture thing. I guess we mind this as well. Maybe give a short preview if we end up continuing this next time. But he says Ted Cruz says Goya is a staple of Cuban food. That's a brand. Like I don't. Shouldn't you be focusing more on the product rather than like the actual company producing the product? You say black beans are the cultural product, not Goya black beans. Like, why is the fact it's Goya important? I think the thing about cancel culture in this instance is should we cancel an entire country? Oh, sorry, should we cancel an entire brand just because the CEO says something we like is like mildly problematic?
Mm, I think leadership
I'm back
represents.
to my tantrum.
Like
I
leadership's
think leadership.
replaceable. That's my point.
Uh-huh.
Huh?
I'm back.
Leadership is replaceable. Oh, hi, Christian.
Yes.
I get that, but like we've seen the effects of poor leadership representation because of Trump. Like we've seen higher amounts of racism being more acceptable or to the public because of his rhetoric, and I think like that's an indication as to like leadership, like what the leader says is important, and like what they represent is important.
Oh,
um But
well,
I think like why I put that tweet up there was to point out the interesting take that Ted Cruz said that it was canceling free speech because you boycott something, right? Like
that's opposite. No. It is free speech to boycott.
yeah,
That is exuding your right to like. I think sorry, but going back to what I was saying, when I said leadership, I don't think I was trying to say like, oh, he's fine because he's in the leadership, but he doesn't represent the company. I think what I was trying to say is like, you shouldn't cancel Goya. You should cancel the leadership, and you should try to make a movement to say, if you don't agree with that person, kick them out. I mean, like in the sense, like, I mean, it's like say like the dean of a university was like said something problematic or had problematic views, would you like not want your kids to go that would you like want to boycott the university and say like I'm not supporting that, like I'm not supporting that entire university, I'm not supporting the students, etc., for that reason? I mean, because it's similar like the conservatives who like put down Berkeley because they say that Berkeley's filled with like crazy Marxists or some shit, and then like choose to like say that like I'm not I think Trump should cut funding to the university because it's like I don't agree with something, like
I see your point, but I think the boycott might be like a strategy to get people to do something about it. Like to maybe
within the club, within like the company, or
yeah, so like maybe to remove the CEO, for him to step down, for him to write an apology, something like that. Like the boycott is a reaction, is a strategy. I think that's what it is.
it'd be different if like say the government came in and says we're going to dismantle your company. Don't say something like this is different. I mean, this isn't something like that, or say we're going to cut funding to your university. This is different. I mean, yeah, I think that free speech is actually overrated. Not in this instance. Like I think it's fine for the boycott. I don't think that's the issue. I think free speech is overrated in the sense that I think people use the excuse of free speech to say that they can say whatever they want and
Yeah,
act however they want to people. Um, I think that uh, I think that actually some regulation of free speech is actually totally acceptable. I think that just letting people say whatever they want and however they want to damage other people with that, I think is not okay. I think, yeah, I don't know.
even regulation, right? Like because our First Amendment like prohibits like government intervention in free speech whatsoever. But talking about societal consequences, like there's so many people who are so staunchly against the concept of societal consequences that are like being taken like when someone says something that is negatively impactful to society. and they immediately say that that's no longer free speech when those societal consequences come about.
Mhm.
I just think like that conflation is very interesting in our modern take, which it shouldn't be. Like it shouldn't really be conflated. Like free speech doesn't mean you're free from consequences.
Yeah, but I guess back to cancel culture specifically, though, I have some positive. I think I'm not, I'm for elements of cancel culture. I'm also against certain elements.
Same way.
Um, I think for the same reason though that these people are allowed to like express opinions about certain things and mobilize to do certain things. That doesn't mean that such things are free from criticism either. The chain keeps going, right? You can't just say, "Oh, well, I have the freedom to criticize." Well, I have the freedom to criticize your criticism. I mean, or freedom to disagree with that. I think it's fine. I mean, I think people one issue I think with sometimes people the reason why they don't want to criticize cancel culture is because I think people have a very idealistic view of what cancel
You're
culture
canceled for criticizing cancel culture.
is. Don't cancel me. No, I think that's my point. I think there's certain. I think people have very different opinions on cancel culture. What it could, yeah.
Christian, you like to talk about cancel culture sometimes. Do you have anything?
um, I think cancel culture is mostly a sort of means to legislate through culture when justice systems fail.
Oh,
Um, I mean, it is
That's a good take.
true. It's we don't want so R. Kelly doesn't get to be punished. I mean, I don't know what R. Kelly's doing right now. So we sort of reap some justice through adding some punitive behavior towards him as a society. Um, I think it makes sense, but I think in some realms of justice, I think even particularly when it comes towards having a jury or even trying to engage with them, we've already sort of as a culture decided. So that even makes taking some people to court problematic. But outside of the realm of actual crimes, it seems like it still attempts to do the same thing. I think the most egregious example is Sky Jackson doxing like a teenager or saying the N word. And at that point, it's like, oh, I mean, he's a kid. He doesn't know better. But it's like, when do people know better? I mean, with a kid, I think that's an easy argument to make. That's probably bad. But our sort of desire to punish people, I think in a funny way, conservatives want the justice system that they trust so much to do it, whereas people who are more liberal think that it's our culture's job to create that punitive effort.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing I do have to say though is it's the culture, but like it's a certain. That's what they call cancel culture in the sense like the people who tend to cancel do come from a very specific viewpoint sometimes, and so it's I think it's and plus like sometimes they could rely off of limited information because we have like a bunch of people like relying off of just what like a few people say, like some really popular tweet comes out saying, "Oh, this person did this blank blank blank," then it sort of this sort of view kind of easily propagates and without like much like easy access to I think some more nuanced view on it. I mean, a good example is when they tried to sort of cancel Bernie because they said that he was saying something along the lines of like I don't think you as a woman can be president, but I think in context when you actually like read what was probably said by him, a lot of people were just kind of reacting off of the anger of like their fellow people. But when you saw the example of what he was saying, it was probably something more like it could have easily been, and this matches more what he would say is like something like it's really hard for a woman to become president in this current climate.
America is not ready for a woman.
Exactly. Yeah. It was
But
not really like I don't think you as a woman have the capability. It's like it's so hard for women. Like
We
it's
don't like women.
yeah, exactly. It's gonna be really hard. I
yeah,
mean,
but
that's how it's
I
gonna be.
think ultimately when it comes to cancel culture, it's ultimately it has no teeth. I mean, anyone who's ever stayed canceled has has probably gone to jail. That's like Bill Cosby. But someone who's been quote canceled like Louis C.K., he's still doing shows. He's just not promoting them too much. So
Well, because when someone's
I mean,
canceled, it's corporate level usually reacts to it more. Like
yeah, but
companies.
but then where for Louis C.K. But I think another example would be like the James Charles, that his mentors whatever, I don't know too much. I just know James Charles. I like James Charles. Um, the Tati, whatever her name was, called him out and as essentially being a predator, and he got called out and he was canceled all over Twitter, and he was losing subscribers. And oh wow, look, Charles Cruz is over. Um, all types of people rejoiced for some reason. But then I think a month later, maybe not even a month later, he flipped the script on it. He made a video that clarified everything, and everyone's like, "Oh, look, it's all James Charles is fine now, and his career is fine now." So not only have we established that the first uh, case of canceling was misdirected. Secondly, it was undone with a counter cancel on Tati, who also still has a career, and meanwhile James Charles sort of brushed it off. So I think these are ultimately very dramatic showings that, for the most part, amount to nothing. And in a way, they are a virtue signal. Like, oh, look who I've canceled today. Look who I have, as an individual, denounced. And in a way, I feel like it feeds into the value of our American individuality. Look who I have shunned from my circle. Look who I have, as the king of my own American castle, have denounced as if they were a state and I am a prime minister or something.
I think maybe that might be true for people who are famous to not be as famous and rich, wealthy, to not be as affected by cancel culture. But then, like, there is like some instances where people are detrimentally affected by cancel culture, as like for the sake of free speech, everyone's able to say whatever they want, however they want. I'm just not really for that, but I do think that sometimes cancel culture does go too far, like when canceling someone who might say something that is not blatantly racist, that is not blatantly like vitriolic, and it's just something like, for example, something like, it's not transphobic for me to not want to date trans. You know what? Something along the lines of that, right? They might be canceled. Like they might be canceled for that, and some people might twist that to be something hateful, something discriminatory, even though they might have other reasons underlying it. And if that person like demonstrates that kind of mindset in a public forum that they aren't really like great at displaying, you know, like in a more politically tactful way, they might lose their jobs. Like, it's just, you have to be really careful about what you say online, and that's just how it is nowadays. And then there's other obviously like people who are canceled, people who deserve it, like, and I wouldn't say deserve, like, I don't really care for cancel culture, but I wouldn't like really care for about the people who are racist, like blatantly racist about it and blatantly obvious about it. I think an interesting spin that cancel culture has taken, because cancel culture is predominantly like a left phenomenon, is the recent case about the Harvard graduate, if you guys heard about it, that got canceled for saying she would stab people if they told her.
Oh, I heard about that. Yeah.
That was hilarious.
Stab people of what?
She would stab people if someone went up to her and said, "All lives matter." I think she was being like facetious, like being very sarcastic about it. Like, if you tell me, like, you know, like she was making a comparison. It was like one of those sure, all lives matter, like all lives matter, but like if my house is on fire, and your house isn't on fire, like my house is the only house that matters, you know, like those comparisons, those analogies. So her point was like, I've seen the video. So what she said was, if you come up to me and tell me one more time that all lives matter, I'm going to stab you, and then I'm going to watch you bleed out and look in your eyes and tell you that my life matters too. So it's basically that kind of like analogical, I can't speak, analogical statement. But yeah, so like she made that statement, and then she got fired from her Deloitte job as she was supposed to start. And then she made a whole video about how like cancel culture from the right was very toxic, you know, blah blah blah. And there was a lot of comments that was basically laughing at leftist cancel culture because this is basically a 180, right?
Well, I mean, this happens with conservatives. I just think we call it cancel culture when we presume that it's funded by virtue. But then when it's like, back in the day, this would happen to someone if they were caught for being gay. This would happen with they probably gay. I mean, that's something that people in the closet had to deal with. I mean, don't I still tell people were canceled for being in the military. But Kaepernick was canceled from the NFL. We don't call that cancel culture, but I think inherently when it comes to people on the left, they have to name and dissect everything, but people on the right, on more conservative circles, they just do it. And that's the show.
Oh wait. We're not done. Wait. I had more questions for you after that. Wait. So are you saying that because the right did cancel culture in the past, the left has a right to do cancel culture?
I'm saying that
everybody has the right to do cancel culture.
Morally, people who believe they're acting on moral premises can typically justify anything they do.
Well, yeah, of course.
I mean, if they wanted to fire someone for being gay, that into some people's eyes, that was doing something, that was punishing someone for lacking virtue, the same way that we want to punish someone for saying the N-word for their lack of virtue.
Mm-hmm. Yes, in a ways it's.
And I'm not saying these are comparable, but to some people's moral calculus, it turns out that way.
Yeah, I think just in general, everyone should be very careful about what they say online, or like.
The corporation.
We don't condone anything we say. This is just stuff we see. Right?
Yeah, we're just commenting on that. I mean,
yeah,
it is true though. I think corporations have an incentive though to act more extremely in responses to this stuff though, because they're afraid to lose the support. Because a lot of if people don't condemn like a group of people or someone in their organization, I mean, we saw with Goya Foods, right? If they don't condemn the CEO, then they're going to get canceled, the company. So it's like the power of like a group of people to like enact a certain like virtue or I mean it is. I mean either virtue or lack thereof of virtue.
People probably forget about it. It'll probably won't.
People usually do forget about it, yeah, because like when people get canceled, like most of the time people don't, the regular public doesn't pay attention. It's like a small group of people actually, comparatively, who actually are actively
the silent majority
trying to cancel or a group of people. I mean, it seems like wait, what?
The silent majority.
Well, it's more like. Oh, I don't want to use the silent majority in the sense of the silent majority is mostly conservative, although that has some truth to it. I think in the United States, I think it's like just a lot of people just don't care enough to really like try to go through the effort of trying to cancel somebody.
Arguably, my sort of take is when it comes to companies, particularly media companies, having really diverse casts, etc., they probably have like data that fuels their business choices. So I think, arguably, the silent majority may actually be more liberal than people would like to admit it. At least now.
Maybe.
I mean,
well, now maybe.
I mean,
yes.
like corporations can sign up for gay pride parades, and no one bats an eye. They're still around. The silent majority was that conservative. It wouldn't be that good of a choice.
Well, I definitely agree that I think the corporations are starting to they're starting to gear more towards liberal side, but I think that is because there are an increasing number of liberals than there were in whatever the silent majority was referred to back in the time of was that during Lyndon Nixon. Sorry, I was like, I thought it was Johnson and the conservatives were saying, but I realized it's a little bit.
No, that was Nixon's big argument during the protests. Was sure you have these handful of people.
You have these loud people, but most of the people are the silent majority support.
But the majority is just silent because they're happy with the status quo.
Yeah, with the Harvard thing. What is I personally haven't seen any leftist defend her so far.
Yeah, I haven't either. I really haven't. Somewhere,
I'm sure someone has.
There's definitely someone who's out there.
I haven't seen it.
Actually, I feel like the majority of leftists I saw were not against her. They were just kind of laughing at the whole situation.
Yeah, Yeah, so like us, basically.
Yeah, I mean, they weren't condemning her, but they weren't also siding with her. They were just kind of like,
I mean, at this point, I feel like the response I like to give is, especially when it comes to firing people. I mean, when they're racist, the point of view is, I mean, I want to have a racist bus driver because that's kind of a liability. I don't know what this bus driver with his opinions are going to do to my business. There's sort of an inclination that it's better for him. Particularly in
So
this case, I mean, I'm not sure what this girl's doing. Essentially, keeping her on hire means that she endorses her actions. But I mean, we don't work for a company 24/7. So how much of our opinions belong to a company when we're off the clock?
you know what? Personally, I don't think companies care about like morale as much as we think they do.
no,
They care about image.
Mm-hmm.
So like I feel like if you were racist in your own time, if you were racist not publicly, like if you weren't like putting it on display, they wouldn't have like they wouldn't have the ability nor would they care if you were thinking some fucked up shit in your mind,
yeah.
but they were like, "Hi, how are you?" to like a black man, right? Like I think like they don't have that jurisdiction anyway. So
Well, they don't cancel you for strictly what you say. They cancel you because what you said got viral and popular. People
yeah,
get pissed off, and then you're like, I don't want this representing my company because we're gonna lose viewers, subscribers,
that's that.
buyers, investors, etc. And we don't want that associated. So it is. I think the more virtuous signal is not necessarily the people who are leading the cancel culture. It is the companies which act on such a thing are virtuous signal because they're signaling virtue that I don't agree with this.
Yeah, all for capital.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like all the memes they make jokes about, like Pride Month, right? Or they have Pride Month, right? And they're just like they show all the companies like right after Pride Month ends, they just all delete all the LGBT stuff. It's just not it.
Yeah, I think like the smarter people will try to like say shut up, like shut up about it, and then just do their own thing outside of online. Or like some people have made fake accounts to like showcase their perspectives and not put their jobs on there, which is like relatively like that's also another strategy. Not
Yeah,
not saying people should be racist, but like don't like just be careful about what you say.
yeah. Sorry,
Bye,
that was
everyone, on the recording. This is the Christian soundbite of conclusion. All the audio editing that Mico will obviously do will make sure this is all
I
crisp and
definitely will
concise.
do. I definitely will do.
Should cut down this 2 hour thing into a nice crisp 10 minutes.
I'm not doing that.
Uh-oh. Jazz hands.
yes, jazz hands, and let's close off with Entrance the Gladiators.
This could be our thing. I mean, can
Their
you
theme,
hear
yes.
it? Should turn it.
Okay, we'll dub afterwards with.
We'll dub. Mico add it in post.